recording.
This is ontheropes.net podcast, episode 1. I'm joined by James Morcan, who is an actor, writer and producer that resides in Sydney, and a massive boxing fan. And me and James are basically going to be talking about the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight that's in the Los Angeles Staples Center on the 1st of December. So how's it going, James?
Oh, excellent, mate. Thanks for bringing me on here, and I'm totally psyched for this fight. I've been waiting for this for a long time, but I'm having trouble predicting it. I honestly think there's so many unknowns with this fight that anyone who says they know for sure what's going to happen are kidding themselves. And I don't even know whether Deontay or Tyson really will know until maybe something like halfway through the first round. And it's just and most of the variables are coming from, or most of the unknowns I think are coming from Tyson's end. But I also think there's a lot of unknowns with Deontay too. So Tyson's end would be if this was late 2015 or sometime in 2016, I think it'd be a no-brainer myself. After the Klitschko win, that was so dominant. He was the lineal champ. The movement he displayed there, I think you'd be backing Fury all the way. But doing what he's done to his body, he admits to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and just eating like a pig. I don't know enough about the human anatomy to know whether. I think it would almost take a doctor into the equation here, if not a psychiatrist too, to figure out, can Fury do what he did before? But then on the Deontay end, who has he really fought? Who, they're saying, how many champions how many guys have we seen who have immense power? But then when they step up to the elite level, it doesn't translate. And I honestly think it's too early in his career to say that he's got anything like Foreman power. I mean, we've got what Foreman did to Frazier, say, that we knew then that is monster power that translates right at the highest level. But until he does it until he has the major fights that his career needs, starting with Fury and then AJ, let's see if it translates. But I also think the other thing that's been misunderstood with Wilder is that to compare him to the great power punchers of yesteryear, so Mike Tyson, Frazier, Foreman, Liston, Marciano, you got to remember these guys were highly skilled, and they had chins that could take a punch, but they were elusive, and so they could last long enough in fights where their power could eventually work. They weren't just guys who were just coming in, like madmen and just throwing and not really caring about their defense or skills. And I'm not saying Wilder doesn't have deceptive skills. I just need to see more of him to know. And so it's too early to compare him to someone like Foreman or to think that he can just bowl these top guys over. What do you think?
Well, I don't think that Tyson or Wilder belongs in that bracket. Ali, Foreman, Frazier, even going back to Gene Tunney, Jack Dempsey, or any of these sort of fighters. I think it's far too premature. Mm-hmm. Tyson in this fight, for me, Tyson is slightly ahead experience-wise because of his fight with Klitschko. But if you look at Tyson's record, I mean, he jumped from Chisora to Klitschko. So there's kind of question marks as to where he is. And plus the sort of 3-year hiatus he had with all the personal problems and so on. We don't know quite where he's at.
Yeah.
And that adds to the variables that you're talking about that makes this fight so intriguing, because we don't know if Tyson is at the same level or has attained the same level he was at against Klitschko. And we don't know as well if he really is, or he belongs where Ali belongs, because he only beat Klitschko once, and we don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, that Klitschko fight, there was a lot of things Tyson did that caused Klitschko problems. For a start, he was erratic. He was elusive. He was fast. His boxing IQ was great for that fight. He did everything right. But also, by the same token, Klitschko looked a bit reticent. He looked a bit. I mean, he is a defence-first fighter, but he looked to me as if he was slightly off. That's not to take away, the win. I mean, going over there to Germany on his home soil and taking the belt. I mean, it's a great achievement. But what I'm saying is that it wasn't a clear cut sort of victory for me, because Klitschko showed a different side when he fought AJ. So we don't know. I would have liked to have seen Tyson in a rematch. I would have liked to have seen Tyson maybe fight somebody else afterwards, but obviously personal things came up, and that 3-year hiatus, 2.5 year it was, has raised more questions.
Yeah.
And I think the 2 warm-up fights that we've seen with Pianata and Safari have not really answered those questions either. Because those fight. Sorry, what are you going to say, Jim?
I was just going to say, you're spot on there. Those were really exhibitions and knockover jobs, weren't they?
Yeah, I would say so. And they don't emulate the style of Wilder at all in any way. They're kind of come forward. I mean, they suit Tyson. Those 2 guys, the style they have suit Tyson. They come forward, they plod forward. There's not a lot of imagination in their work, and Tyson can just pick them off easily. I mean, it's good that, don't get me wrong, it's good that he's got rid of some of that ring rust. I just think with Wilder, you're fighting a guy who he's not going to plod forward quite the same fashion as Pianata or Safari. Sorry.
Maybe Safari is a better. Maybe Safari is a better word there for what it looked like. Tyson was on holiday. It looked like.
Tyson was hunting in that fight. I think. I think he was hunting a massive monkey, to be honest. But being serious, those 2 fighters, I mean, he would have shook off some ring rust, but are they ideal opponents for the calibre of Wilder? Flaws aside, what do you think?
I think they're terrible opponents for him, and that goes back to what I saw with his legs in that fight. He didn't look like he had his wheels like he did before. They didn't look coordinated with his hands. And I know he was still losing weight at that point, so we can give him a bit of leeway there. But those guys were just that's a terrible warm up. And the idea was he was going to have 4 warm up fights, he said, and take about a year, and then suddenly he's into this. But one thing he said there, and I think it all comes back to this in analysing the fight, is what really happened in the Klitschko fight. Now, I've got a bit of a I know yours is the prevailing, within the boxing community in that, I think yours is the prevailing opinion. So I may be wrong, but I believe we saw something there that we may see in this fight. And I believe what it was is that, you talk about Tyson Fury, where he's never fought many guys closer to his height, right? But Klitschko and also Wilder and AJ are specialising in beating shorter guys, and usually quite a bit shorter. And I believe what it was for the first time in his career, Klitschko actually had to close the distance. And I believe he couldn't judge it. It looked like, this is just my take, is that it looked like he was hesitant all night. But then again, when was Klitschko ever hesitant to land power against guys he didn't respect? If Fury was such a light puncher, why was he? Why was nothing coming back? I mean, this is a guy that's had one of the highest KO ratios in heavyweight history. He did have.
Yeah.
I believe there's an argument that Klitschko punches harder than Wilder, or at least as hard. I believe what we saw there was very tricky technical stuff where Klitschko, and he did, even though Klitschko was saying this, he was saying this line in the build up to the rematch. He was saying constantly, "Look, I just wasn't on it that night. There was something off with me. I'll be right this time." I noticed in one interview, he actually said that he had trouble closing distance and judging distance, and I believe there is a possibility that Wilder and AJ will not be within one training camp. They're not going to be able to figure out how to do this. I think it's an art that guys like Marciano, Tyson, Frazier had it to a T. So the problem is often you can be just short, so you're not going to land that punch. And Klitschko was often just short, or you can be, as you're coming in and closing that distance, for a guy who's taller than you, who's got a longer reach and is a better mover, there is a problem that you can actually overshoot, and therefore you cramp your style. And I think Wilder, with his lack of, I would have more faith in AJ learning this art, and it's a bit of a lost art in my view. AJ might be able to do that, but this is where even a Tyson Fury who's hasn't quite returned to the 2015 form could get home on points because of these problems, and we may see a fight where Wilder is just chasing him around the ring all night, trying to figure it out, and Fury with his constant feinting and that. Wilder's got no jab, no head movement coming in. This is the way I think the fight could play out, but I'll admit these unknowns on both sides are causing me hesitancy. What do you think?
Well, I think the Klitschko fight, Tyson got in his head prior to the fight. That's just my sort of take on it. And I think that once he was in there fighting Klitschko, I think that the hesitancy also came from the build-up from the fight, the unknown, and that played into it. And I think as time went on with that particular fight, Klitschko realised that, he started to panic a little. He realised that he was kind of, for once, I think it was what did they have, a 10-year reign?
Yeah.
That
yeah.
This was going to end. The realisation that he was going to be beat, and I think he sort of, that played into the whole, it was like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And Tyson sort of capitalised on that, if that makes sense. But going back to Wilder, for me, the big thing is the 3-year layoff. But Wilder, I mean, there's nothing complex about what Wilder brings.
Yeah.
We're talking about the thing about this fight is two attributes that could totally wipe out all of Tyson's advantages. The two attributes he has is power, number one, and two is self-belief. He also has speed. You can't forget that helps. So I don't think it's going to be as much I think if Tyson can establish his jab early and he can back Wilder up, you know what? I think it relies on Tyson's timing, his timing and his sharpness. In order for him, in order for us to sort of see where this fight is sort of heading, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I'm thinking here is it's worth analysing why, like, Fury was supposedly committed to doing 4 fights. Like, Frank Warren said that, his coach said that, and even he said that. And then suddenly it became 2 fights, and suddenly he's in with Wilder. And apparently even Frank Warren and his dad, Tyson Fury's dad, and also Ben Davison, those guys all didn't want him to do this. But he said he's ready, so that what can they do? And I believe it. I believe there's another. I think the AJ factor here plays into this because Fury never got a good payday for the first Klitschko fight. He never got the rematch. He doesn't know. I mean, he's talked about with his depression and that he doesn't know whether he's in this fight, boxing long term, whether he can last. I think they've got Wilder and AJ are ready to go for April. That's all the talk, and they're talking about Fury as if the Wilder camp are talking about it's just a stepping stone to AJ. And Eddie Hearn's got Wembley booked for April and it's some AJ fight soon to be announced. And by the way, that Eddie Hearn Al Heyman deal is for a 2-fight deal, so they'll fight twice, no matter who wins on both sides of the Atlantic. It'll be a huge heavyweight deal, this, but that could take for Fury to get his fight if he didn't go now, and I mean right now. I think December would have been the cutoff. So if I believe even though I don't sense he's coming back for money overall. I think it's glory, but he, like any fighter, he wants to set up his family. And so we may be facing here a bit of a rush job, and he's creatively wording it as, for various reasons. But his previous thing was he didn't want to fight cold. He didn't want to let these guys catch him cold. He wanted a proper build-up. And I believe but then I believe he's also fought a guy he believes he can win now. So if he had to fight one of them now, I think there was a reason why he turned down AJ. I think he sees something in Wilder that even if he's 80% what he was against Klitschko, he can still win on points.
Yeah, well, I think if you look at Wilder, you can see loads of vulnerabilities that Tyson could capitalise on. So when you watch Wilder, he carries his hands very low. His left-hand side susceptible. He leads. Tyson switch hits as well, and we've seen Wilder struggle at times with southpaws. Even in the Ortiz fight, you could see Ortiz found his range in about the 4th round.
Yeah.
And Wilder was starting to struggle. So I mean, Tyson, when it comes to boxing and when it comes to that jab, I could see that posing lots of problems for Wilder. But with that said, Tyson has a very good output for a heavyweight. He's a good engine. That presents openings for Wilder as well. So that's what makes the fight kind of intriguing through that sort of perspective. But I think Tyson understands that Wilder is limited.
Yeah.
And he probably recognises, he probably recognises these flaws that I'm speaking about and how he can capitalise on it. The problem is Wilder can hit, he can bang. And so Tyson's going to need to be switched on for 12 rounds. If he gets complacent or he loses focus, and Wilder manages to catch, because Tyson as well, isn't he, without his vulnerabilities? If you watch Tyson fighting, he sort of, his left hand's very, very low at times.
Mm-hmm.
And that presents a perfect attack surface for Wilder to come on. The other thing as well, when I watch Tyson fight, is when he's jabbing, he'll sometimes his right hand will cross over his chest,
right,
which presents an opening for the left hook.
Mm-hmm.
And Wilder sometimes likes to throw that left hook. I mean, it's not as skinny with his right hand, but it's enough to sort of momentarily put you off balance to then throw the right hand over the top.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, it's not as clear cut as what people think. Wilder has opportunities here. For me, it boils down to whether Tyson is as sharp as he was against Klitschko, because he's going to need to be. It's his sharpness and timing, that's going to establish the winner in this. Tyson being the winner in this fight. I don't know what you think about that.
No, absolutely, and I'm just wondering whether Wilder. I don't think he'll have the skills that potentially AJ would have to constantly get in on the inside, whereas I'm wondering. Let's say if the fight plays out where that jab's just popping him all night long. Is there a possibility that Wilder could do a triple G and just decide to start walking, just accepting that he's going to take punches and not worrying about that? And will he risk getting hurt himself to just land that big right?
See, I don't think, I can't envision that happening. I think Wilder, I've seen him like in his previous fights, he doesn't really walk a guy down.
No.
He slowly inches his way forward.
Mm.
You've seen it in the Arthur, is it Spielka, is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
You've seen it in that fight where Arthur couldn't really hurt him, and he didn't really jump on Arthur. He sort of walked slowly but surely inched his way forward.
Mm.
Tyson's not known as a major puncher, but he probably doesn't tackle a guy either when he hits him.
Doesn't. No, I'm not discounting Deontay Wilder getting knocked out late in this fight. I think if there is a major skill gap and Deontay doesn't have a lot of success, I mean, people are treating this as the only thing Fury can possibly do is last to the 12th round. But I wouldn't be so sure, because how many times have we seen knockouts by attrition, by lighter punching guys?
Well, for me, I think Wilder presents openings that Tyson can capitalise on for the knockout. He is susceptible to rights himself. He's also susceptible to left hooks. The way he holds his hands very low, like Tyson, as well. And he does some things, there's repetition in his game. If you watch him, he'll try and draw leads by bobbing left and right, and he'll do it maybe 48 times, and then he'll reset. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to draw leads so that he can say, like, for instance, he's drawing a lead to say he's trying to draw a left hand. He's doing that so you'll sort of dip down with the left, you'll punch downwards with the left hand, he can come up over with the right.
Right.
He does things like that, but he's not very consistent when he's doing it. His lateral movement is very poor. I think he's going to struggle.
Mate, have you checked out his balance? Have you checked out his balance? How about that?
Yeah, he's got a very wide stance. Another thing as well, you can time, and this goes back to, it's interesting because you get Freddie Roach training him. Freddie Roach was, not training him, sorry, he's going to be in his corner as an advisor. He was taught by Eddie Futch, and Futch sparred with Joe Lewis, and Tyson's referred to this fight. I don't know if he's looking at this fight the way that, he sees this fight as being similar as to the Max Schmeling Joe Lewis fight.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, he's mentioned that a few times. I don't know if it's because they share the same name, similar way, because there's nothing else really that's similar.
No, I don't see
Joe
that.
Lewis won his Arsenal, with it, being disrespectful to Wilder. Lewis was a fantastic fight, 11 year in 8 month reign or something like that, 25 title defences. That's legendary stuff. But Futch used to spar with Joe Lewis, and one of the things he said, when Lewis would be pretty, he would be pretty flat-footed when he came in, and what he used to do was time his right foot coming up off the floor, because he knew that Lewis was going to punch, so he used to watch his feet, and then he would counter just at the moment he seen the ball of his foot start to rise. So I think if you watch Wilder, I watched, especially if you watch him against Ortiz, there was a couple of times where he goaded Ortiz towards him.
He does, yeah. Yeah.
And then he lifted himself practically off the ground to that right hand. So if Tyson can time him, can see the repetition in his game, Don't get me wrong as well, both of these guys are kind of reflexive fighters when you watch them as well. So I don't know. I think that there's flaws in both guys,
Mm-hmm.
and they both have the speed, and obviously Wilder has the power to negate Tyson's qualities and advantages. So it's really a mixed bag, mate. I don't know. What do you see in Tyson? What flaws do you see in Tyson that Wilder could sort of expose?
I think it's more the question is how hard does he hit? Because I still think it might come down to, will Wilder accept a few punches in order to, he might be hit 2 or 3 times, but if he can land his, that's the unknown with Fury. But I believe I saw something in the Klitschko fight where he does hit hard enough, and it kind of makes sense, like a 6'9" man, 260 pounds. I think he's got enough pop, unlike Huey Fury, which I've got big question marks over whether he bangs enough. And maybe that's because he's not quite in his man body yet. I'm not sure. But with Tyson, he's still got to prove his power, I think. So that's a potential flaw I see. And I do see what you see about holding his left low, and it's almost like he's trying to do at times, what I'm worried about with Fury is he falling in for the myths that have built up around him over that Klitschko fight? Because what worries me is he's calling himself the Mayweather of heavyweights, and I hope like hell that he's not going to stand in the corner against Wilder and think he can do a Mayweather. You know how Mayweather's. Let me think of it. He's an orthodox fighter, so his left hand is low, but it's in a Philly shell, and sometimes Fury tries to copy something like that, and it would be a disaster. I think Fury has to use his movement and his legs to win this fight. I don't see him winning a stationary or quite a static fight. Do you know what I mean?
No, I kind of see. I don't see Fury winning in a firefight.
No.
I think he's got to use his boxing ability and take advantage of Deontay Wilder's weaknesses and flaws. I mean, everybody's sort of looking at Wilder negatively. I mean, he's been labelled a basketball player and a glorified athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I think though he's got some qualities that people are maybe overlooking. Obviously, power's one of them. I know you're saying it's open to debate whether he has the power at that level. I've heard that myself. I've had conversations with guys on Twitter who are in the know, who have questioned that. But I think we've seen with the Ortiz fight that he can bang. I mean, if you look at that I think it was the 5th round, he dropped Ortiz.
The only thing with that though, Ian, sorry, is that I take your point. That's the one semi-elite level fight he's had. But Ortiz, there's rumors he's much older, right? You know all that. Everyone knows all that. But also, he was going in with a heart condition that Fury's been talking about that he's got inside knowledge on that, and we don't know that for sure. But what I mean is, Ortiz did seem to be tiring there as it went on, and I don't know whether that was a knockout, just knocking down a fresh man in the 5th round, like you said, or whether it was. I saw signs that Ortiz might, the stamina was already going. What do you think?
Nah, well, what I noticed with that fight is the first sort of 3 rounds were pretty cagey, but I had Ortiz ahead. And by the 4th round, I think Ortiz found his timing and distance, and you could see Wilder was starting to struggle a little. And I think maybe Ortiz got a bit complacent, and that's why by the 5th round, he was being a little bit more aggressive, and Wilder found his range. Right. And I think that's what happened. And then after that, the confidence, he maybe dented Ortiz's confidence a little, because now Ortiz realises this guy can hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you couple that with his stamina waning, and that's how it kind of played out. That's for me. It was a mixture of things. I had Ortiz ahead.
Yeah, same. Definitely.
But that's the coming to that point about Ortiz, the performance against Ortiz. Tyson can fight southpaw,
right?
As we know.
I predict he'll do that quite a bit in this. Yeah.
I think he'll find success in doing that as well, because as we seen in that fight, it kind of upset Wilder, that stance. But not only that, he was susceptible to the right hand lead as well.
Yeah.
And we seen that in the fight against I think Wilder, is it Gerald Washington?
Yeah.
When he was susceptible to the jab.
Definitely.
Washington was backing him up, and he doesn't like that.
No.
So I think Tyson, going back to what I said before, I think the key is the jab. But as I mentioned, the jab, Wilder will be looking to get that right hand over the top of that.
Yeah, well, but the other thing is, I mean, the southpaw factor is and the ability to switch hit is a rare skill for a heavyweight right now.
Yeah.
I think that'll come into it, but I'm unsure how it'll work, because on the one hand, I can see his trainers, and I mention that plural because I'm not sure whether it'll be Roach, Davison, or Hatton. But anyway, his corner will be instructing him to use that, I think, because it puts him, if you think about it, Wilder's got to travel an extra couple of inches if Fury is standing as a southpaw. Okay. But I also think Fury's a little bit less confident. I don't think he's like the great switch hitters, to be honest. I think he's a capable switch hitter, but I see him as being less confident as a southpaw. What do you think?
I don't know. He seems pretty natural when he does it. It seems seamless when he does it as well.
Right.
I don't have any qualms about him having success being a southpaw. I think Wilder presents so many weaknesses that he can get away with. As I said, he keeps his hands low. He also moves. Another thing as well about Wilder, he moves straight back in a line when you back him up.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't discount Fury charging him at times and maybe upsetting. And Fury is a madman, let's face it, which helps this whole scenario. I wouldn't discount Fury doing something. I mean, everyone's kind of predicting he'll do the blueprint of the Klitschko fight. I wouldn't discount something very unusual here. I'm not quite saying headbutts or anything, but he might try. For example, Wilder has got a terrible inside game. He just freezes. Now, I'm not saying
he doesn't have.
Yeah,
he doesn't have.
Yeah, and against Ortiz, I think if Ortiz had lasted longer, he was starting to make that work for him. And all Wilder had was holding a guy and leaning down on him. But he can't do that against Fury because he's the shorter man. So I wouldn't discount. I actually see something in Fury where he's definitely not a great inside fighter, and he's got such long limbs, but he's not bad. He can actually, if you go right back to when he was 20 years old against McDermott, he wasn't fighting he wasn't using his attributes then. He was fighting quite stupidly. I see him under Peter Fury fighting a tall man's fight. But what I'm getting at is he was getting into fights where he was at least competitive against British level fighters, fighting where he would often throw like a 5 or 6 punch combination on the inside and hit the body in that. And potentially, I'm not saying that'll be his first port of call. I think he'll try and jab and move. But if for some reason, let's say he doesn't have the stamina or he gets hurt or cut or something happens, maybe he's got a bit of a plan B game for Wilder here, using his greater ring IQ. Maybe it'll be a combination of scrapping on the inside but then tying Wilder up. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, you pointed to the lack of body work through Wilder, which is another weakness, which is surprising as well, because Wilder, he was trained by Mark Brayland at Kronk Gym. Brayland, you know yourself, Kronk Gym produced so many great fighters that have that kind of physical stature that Wilder's got. You know, they're long, they're sinewy, they look for leverage when they're punching. But most of the Kronk Gym guys, if you look at Gerald McClellan, you look at Hearns, you look at Mike McCallum, they all had, you know, they had great, they had a great body game, for want of better words, good body shots. Wilder doesn't throw anything meaningful to the body. Now and again, you'll see something from him, but only if he's in range or the other guy's kind of hurt or been backed up, which is kind of surprising because you would expect a guy like that who relies, you know, whose total sort of end game is to get that right hand off. You would expect him to go to the body to try and make a guy drop his hands or, you know, that kind of thing so that he can get the right hand off. He doesn't do that. So I think Tyson could be reassured that he's not got to worry about this guy wearing him down to the body.
Yeah.
So if they're in close, just tie him up. Lean on him even. We don't even know, like, Wilder, his punching power obviously comes through leverage.
Yeah.
But physically, is he strong? Is he a physically strong person? Tyson's going to come in here weighing maybe, 18 stone?
Yeah.
And Wilder would be, 15 and a half, I'd reckon.
He's more like a cruiserweight, yeah. Yeah.
So maybe Tyson can find some sort of facility to lean on him as well, to wear him down that way.
Why not? Why not? I mean, if you're fighting the shorter guy and you've got that body weight advantage, no, I think I mean, he doesn't look. The only thing are we missing some sort of deceptive skill with Wilder? Does he look? Is there something we're missing with this guy? Like Ortiz was a pretty savvy, I think a world champ amateur. He was using his skills there well, and yet did Wilder overcome him just with power, or is there something deceptive here? Because I know Wilder's got his real fans who say that he's the number one heavyweight and he's a lot more skilled than people realize. Have you thought about whether there's something, or whether he's using some sort of new style that we've never seen before? Or is it just athleticism and power, really?
It's power and self-belief. His confidence levels is through the roof. And he has some sort of unconventional training methods. I remember a Michelle Phelps interview with him.
You're referencing great boxing journalism here, but go on.
Well, she done a good job with this because she drew out some stuff that's interesting. He apparently meditates for hours on end.
Okay.
You've done some research into this stuff, so you know the benefits of that. And when it comes to focus and visualization, you know, it pays dividends.
Yeah.
And that Wilder's, I mean, that would sort of be opposite for Wilder's style, because his style is a sharpshooter. He stalks, and he waits for openings. He doesn't really force openings. He prefers he prefers to counter, but he's.
See, I can see that working. I can see that working against AJ. I can see him waiting. I'm not saying he would beat AJ or anything like that, but I just mean that I just think he's going to have to force the pressure and come forward more against Fury. And so it doesn't, what he was doing against Ortiz there doesn't, I can't see that playing out here. Just wait, because Fury's not going to be stupid and throw haymakers. Or the other thing with the hands is interesting because we've seen fighters before. I can think of two fights, Vitaly Klitschko and Lennox Lewis. And then if you go back to the Rumble in the Jungle, Ali Foreman, those two fights, all those guys at various times would drop their hands low. But if you watch the early rounds, it looks like a classic amateur boxing match where they they all went, and I mention all those four guys because those were the tallest guys who have ever fought each other or thereabouts at heavyweight boxing history at the times they were fought. And I noticed they all had their hands very high, and it did look like I'm not saying as the fight wore on, some of them started to drop their hands as they got tired, but I believe when this begins, it'll look, because they're both so tall, I think they will adapt their style. And I think Fury in particular, because he's only got to look out for one punch, I don't think he will be so relaxed particularly with his left hand.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, Wilder will be looking to come over the top of that. One of the things I would sort of like to see Fury do against Wilder with his left hand is to keep it up, but not only to keep the hand up a bit higher, but to tuck his chin into his shoulder when he's thrown it,
right,
as well, just to protect the mandibular region.
Mm-hmm. That's where you need Cus D'Amato to be around to train you. Remember how with Mike Tyson he used to tell him, even while you're walking around when you're going to the shops, he wanted his chin tucked in. Yeah.
Because that's what Wilder will be looking for. He'll be looking to come over that left. As I said, it's like Tyson's main weapon in this fight is going to be the jab. Mm-hmm. He's going to be successful at it, but inextricably, it's going to also be it's going to help to provide Wilder with openings as well, because Wilder's looking to come over the left jab with the right.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it kind of like, for the hardcore fan who's looking at it technically, for all of Wilder's flaws, there is some things here that he can capitalise on.
Mm-hmm.
So for the hardcore fan, it's interesting for that sort of perspective. I feel that going back to what you were saying as well about when Tyson fought Klitschko, I believe that he got Klitschko's respect.
Yeah.
With his punching power. And Tyson as well, he can, now and again he'll throw in a thudding left hook.
Right.
I don't know if you ever watched the, I think it was the Joey Bell fight.
I saw that. Yeah.
Now that wasn't one of Tyson's best performances, but it was one of his more aggressive performances.
That's what I'm just wondering, because I mean there's a lot of Johnny come latelys with Tyson Fury, and they're really, I don't believe they've gone back through his entire career or they followed him or anything like that, and they're really just basing everything off this Klitschko fight. And I wonder, Klitschko was such a master at shutting things down and restricting a fight to just his sort of fight. But when you think of AJ and Wilder, because I'm bringing AJ into this too, because that's the next, there's a whole triangle here, right?
Yep.
These guys allow you to do your thing, really. They're not guys who reduce a fight to to suit them. And so I'm wondering whether this fight might play out in unusual ways. And I think it's in Fury's nature to always try and do something unpredictable to unsettle the guy. Like Wilder will have a game plan in mind. He's expecting something. And Fury the whole way has been talking about he's going to box and move. He's not going to allow him to get too close. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if that's all just build up. And I've got no doubt surely at times he's got to use his fundamentals. But I mean, there were times in that Klitschko fight where he was actually bobbing and weaving. Do you remember that? He was coming under Klitschko, and he was.
I've seen him do that a few times.
Yeah, and I mean, Ali would do that too. Ali would do that too, where he would go under people as well. But on top of that, there were times where he was charging forward and meeting Klitschko, which is not the classic tall man, big man style, Well,
going back to what I was saying with Wilder's mistakes, sometimes you see him moving back in a straight line. And when he moves back in a straight line, I've seen him drop his hands while moving back, and other times I've seen him extend his hands up.
That's terrible when he does that. When he extends his hands, yeah. Yeah, and I think Ortiz just couldn't quite take advantage of that. But I certainly think someone like AJ would be all over that.
Well, I think Ortiz never had the foot speed.
Right.
If you watch that fight, you'll see that Wilder was pretty. He's not got the greatest of footwork, but he's pretty fast at moving back. I think with Tyson, he might be able to, cut the gap down a bit quicker and maybe capitalise on that straight, the way he moves back when he's in defensive mode. You've just got to watch with Wilder, because sometimes when he moves backwards, it's mainly like calculated when he does this, but sometimes when he moves backwards, he'll just suddenly leap forwards.
Yeah.
When he gets his full body weight. So Tyson's got to watch for these wee kind of things. I think Wilder's got more to his game than giving credit, although he's limited in his arsenal. I mean, you're either going to get two types of jab from him. You either get a kind of pawn jab for him to get range or to try and make you lead so that he can counter. You either get a hook from the jab. Sometimes he'll jab and then he'll hook over it, or sometimes he'll wait for your right hand to come in and he'll try and counter with a hook. The other punch is obviously the right hand he's looking to get off. And that's it, really.
That's about it. There's not
a lot more than that. So
yeah,
Tyson's got to try and capitalise on that limitation, but he's also got to be aware that this is the thing about Wilder. He's confident, but he's also aware of his own frailties. He's also aware of his strengths, and so he's quite content with what he's got. That's what people forget. He doesn't try and do it. He doesn't try and do anything that he can't do.
No, you're right.
He sticks with what he's good at, and that's basically sharpshooting, trying to get that right hand off, looking for the nooks and crannies in an opponent's defence to get that off.
One thing you mentioned there about when Wilder springs when you're not expecting it, and he comes from unusual angles, even if those are quite novice-like he doesn't exactly know what he's doing. It's quite instinctive, shall I say, rather than following boxing fundamentals. I think that's the best chance for Wilder in this fight. There might be times where Fury thinks he's got, he can read him well, and it might actually come. I can't remember what you call this in times where it's, when the ref is breaking them up. And then, at times where they're not exactly fighting or not exactly, they're in between, when guys are just relaxed, it might come at an unusual time. I remember Floyd Mayweather got a knockout of a guy where they were breaking them apart, and then they went to touch gloves. Do you remember that?
Ortiz. Yeah, it was Victor Ortiz, was it?
Right. And that was a little bit dirty, but he was following the rules. Like, you've got to defend yourself at all times. And and maybe Wilder might be looking for moments like that where it's just a bit of a dull portion. And Fury is a guy he's a high energetic, excitable guy, but he probably gets bored when nothing much is happening.
Well, I think those fights you were talking about, the Floyd Mayweather one, I think Victor Ortiz, but he tried he was trying to apologise at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
The other one was Gatti. Gatti was complaining to the ref, and Mayweather threw a hook, I think.
Right.
Dropped him to his knee. I think it's that one. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. But I think you're talking about Wilder being erratic and unpredictable. That usually comes out when he's got you hurt or he's in a firefight. The funny thing is, he's predictable in his entirety. You know what he's trying to achieve. He's trying to get that right hand off.
Yeah.
But when he's in a firefight, or when he's got you hurt, that's when the sort of amateurish craziness comes out. Really comes out. I mean, he's kind of amateurish the way he moves and all that, but the way he holds his hands and whatever. But during the firefight is when you really see it. He'll flail
I think that's a good point. That's almost a defense of Wilder, because a lot of people are talking about the windmilling or that he lives up to his name, Wild. But then again, we've seen a bit more of a patient side. Like I don't know if you saw when he won the title against Taverne the first time, and it went the distance. Yeah, he actually used his jab quite a bit. I know this is a totally different fight, but he even allowed himself to fight against the ropes and that. And he does want to. I don't think he's going to be going in crazy gung-ho. It's more that he's dominated so many guys that we've seen that side. And I also think at times he's also trying to make it look more exciting, almost like Mike Tyson knockouts. So that you got to remember, this is a guy that the American public hasn't gotten behind yet. And he's been world champion for a long time. So I think he's trying to do stuff for TV cameras as well. When he knows he's already got the guy, he shows off his athleticism.
Yeah, but mate, it's horrible viewing.
Yeah.
It's putting people off.
For the boxing, that's true. But for the boxing hardcore, maybe. But for the Joe casual, maybe they think, oh, this boxing sport looks really athletic, or really, I don't know. But the other thing is, just to bring in AJ, whoever comes through this, how do you think AJ plays into this against these two guys? I mean, I know we need to see the fight, but do you think they've avoided him for a reason?
I don't think any of these guys would avoid each other. I think their management would be more inclined to avoid and sort of plan to try and maximise income that can be generated. So
yeah,
I don't see AJ being scared of Fury, or Fury scared of AJ or Wilder. I think it's all about money and trying to maximise profits and get the timing right.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem with that is if there's breakdown in negotiations, you've went months without a fight. And it's sort of, I would like to see a tournament of some sort, like the Super Six or something, where it forces these fighters to, because you've got to remember the heavyweight division is the flagship of boxing, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's really what, the non-hardcore fan, the casual is, when the heavyweight division's on fire, boxing really gets a boost. And so we're now at, the time period we're in just now. We've got Wilder, Joshua, Fury,
Usyk.
but you've got Usyk's coming through. We've got the Polish boy. Is it Kownacki? I pronounced that right?
Right.
I'm going. You get Baby Miller,
Dillian White, maybe Joseph Parker and Hughie Fury can come again. Joe Joyce. You've got a pretty cram-packed top 10 or top 15. Yeah.
You've got Nathan Gorman,
Dubois, yeah.
Dubois. Don't know the pronounce that. Too many wines here, I think, mate. But you've got these guys on the periphery. You get Hughie Fury. I don't discount him. He's still young.
Yeah.
He can come again. I mean, what is he, 24?
Yeah.
So, how he might, next 4 years, imagine what he'll be like if he sticks at it, because he's already been at the top, really. Or, knocking on the top.
Yeah.
So there's a real opportunity here for all of these guys. They're not like, there's no Mike Tyson among them. There's no Lennox Lewis among them just yet that I can see.
Yeah.
But they all they're all at a level where they can neutralise and negate each other to bring out competitive fights for the fans. And you could really make the heavyweight scene, great again if they concentrated on, these matchups. Obviously, when I'm talking about Gorman and guys like that, they're still plying their trade, but you can see the talent in them You can visualize. I mean, look, Tyson's what, 30?
Yes,
So you could see Gorman fighting Tyson in 3 years or 2 years or something.
that's right. I mean,
I think they're actually,
I
I
think
think they're
AJ.
actually related.
Yeah,
So I don't know if they were.
there is even a possibility here that with the top three, uh, they could all. We could see. I know it's a title cliche, but we could see styles make fights here, and that it could be something obscure like Fury gets sparked by Wilder, and you think Fury's a joke and he's finished, and then Fury's style would beat AJ, and then Wilder would lose to AJ. It could be something bizarre. I don't discount that.
Yeah, I think so. Styles make fights, so you could find, you know, um, one person's the other person's kryptonite, and there's so many permutations of that.
Hmm.
That could happen. I mean, if you look at it, Wilder, look at the three just now, the top three. So Wilder's the puncher. AJ's a kind of boxer puncher
Yeah.
because we've seen his skills in the Parker fight.
I think he's evolved. He's evolved into that, hasn't he? To be fair.
And yeah, he's constantly evolved. I mean, AJ's probably like a heavyweight Bernard Hopkins because he lives right,
Hmm.
and he's constantly looking to improve.
Yeah, you mean he's the opposite of Fury, the way he's living outside the ring.
I don't think so now. I think
Right.
the good thing is if we go into the psychology behind Fury and what's happened, um, obviously when he beat Klitschko, he'd got to the top of the mountain. And I think as well, he never got the reception that he envisioned, which maybe have made him gravitate towards the madness that he get involved in as well.
Yeah.
I think now he's realised, because so many people, he's found out the fakes, so to speak. He's been in the dumps. He's been looking to commit suicide. Um, he's realised, who his mates are and who's sticking behind him at the very worst at times. He's got a wife that's sticking by him, through thick and thin.
Hmm.
And he's starting to realise he's got a stable base. And I read something recently, and it was he said something about the pills on the pills don't help, and the counselling doesn't help, but exercise does.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says I can't go a week without exercise, so that's a good thing because it means that he now realises that he can't get out of shape. He has to stay fit. So if Tyson is in this good environment, I think Ben Davidson as well. I think he get. I mean, I was one of the guys who sort of said I don't think he's right for Tyson. He's not experienced enough. But I think he makes up for that in other ways.
Definitely. And I think Tyson needed that more than anything. I mean, he's one of those guys, probably if he didn't have a trainer even for a fight, he would be able to handle the skill side pretty good and the tactics, and that he's got high ring IQ.
Yeah.
But he needed someone. I think Tyson got to the level where I think he needed someone 24/7 to, and this young trainer who recognizes an opportunity, he's living with them, and that's a good. I mean, I'm a big Fury fan, as you might be able to guess here, but and I don't discount he might, he's probably got a dark side too, like maybe anyone, but I also think he's not an absolute bastard, and he'd have to be a real bastard to be lying to this guy who's living in his house and actually just be trying to get one more payday and sail off to the sunset. And I actually, if you think about it, with the guy living in your house, your trainer, it would be very hard to fool that guy. And so, you know what I mean? Like he would know if you're eating right, if you're training right, if you're partying or whatever. And they're living together, they've been living together for months now. And so I think we can discount the idea that some people had a while back that Fury's not serious and this is just a final payday and it's all hype. I think he is really committed,
Well, you only need to look at the weight he's lost. I mean, he's lost 10 stone. If that guy never cared, all he was caring about was sort of riding his fame.
Yeah.
Fury with the condition he's in that way. The only, from that sort of perspective, the only thing I would say is the lack of experience for that level, because
Definitely.
Ben, I think it was Billy Joe Saunders, is the only sort of guy I've heard that he's sort of trained. That doesn't mean he's not got any potential or he can't read a fight. It's just that at this level, if you're in a world title fight with the creme de la creme, and your man gets a cut, or your plan A doesn't go to plan, and you have to adjust, you can't buy experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon with Freddie Roach in the corner, I mean, Freddie started with Virgil Hill and all the way up. There's James Toney, Bernard Hopkins. You can go on and on and on about the top fighters. Manny Pacquiao for a start, taking him through basic obscurity and making him into a superstar. From a defeat when he was, I think he was a bantam over in Thailand. He get defeated. So like, you've got all of that. He's got Roach in his corner, and he's also got Hatton, who's fought at the top level. So
he should be right. I mean, maybe I'm wondering whether Fury knew that he was going to do that all along. He was going to give this young guy who he resonates. He was going to have him as his trainer, but when it comes to he needed that backup in the corner in case the fight doesn't go according to Davidson's ideas.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah, and I could imagine, I mean, that could be a problem though, because he could be hearing from if the fight really starts going to custard, it might have been like, when Klitschko started losing, he had about 3 guys in his ear, including his brother, and he didn't seem to respect, I think one problem with Klitschko against Fury is he didn't respect the guy that replaced Emmanuel Stewart. He didn't seem to be listening. And so I hope that Tyson doesn't lose respect for Davison in the same sort of way, because it could get messy trying to get clear instructions from 3 guys. But I think Roach and Hatton will be experienced enough to know they won't speak directly to Tyson so much. They'll speak to Davison between rounds, I'd say.
I think you're right. Too many sort of cooks spoil the broth. So if there's three guys in there, sort of screaming instructions, and I don't think that'll happen though.
No.
I think they'll step in when it's needed, and they'll know when it's needed. The only thing is I've heard some people say that they've brought Roach in to sort of buffer. If there's a loss, it buffers sort of
that's true
position. Buffers him from taking flack. I don't know if that's true or not, but those Roach and Hatton, I've no doubt will know the sort of the timing of when to give their input. I can't see anybody's toes being stepped on. Those two don't look to be like guys who want to take the light or whatever. I think it will be genuine. Sort of genuine advice. They're not here to sort of look for any of Ben Davidson's shine, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll give you I've been thinking about this fight for a couple of months. It's really complicated for all the reasons we've said, but my prediction here, I wouldn't discount the possibility that Fury gets sparked quite quick. I wouldn't discount that at all. More likely late if he's going to get knocked out, but a first round KO, you can't discount something like that. We've seen him. I mean, look what he did against Cunningham. Particularly, I don't even know where his mind is at. Some of the last 2 fights, he was doing really odd stuff. But I think that anyway, that's not my prediction. But I'm just saying, I'm not discounting anything, and I'm also not discounting that even to the extreme where Wilder gets shown up humiliated with just some of the problems we've seen in other fights. No one's been able to take advantage of that. And Fury could even start toying with them. I wouldn't discount something like hands behind back or, where it's just he makes it look quite easy and Wilder's got no answers. But I think more likely my prediction is a close fight, but I think Fury lasts and I think he makes it to the 12th round, and I'd say something like 8 rounds to 4, 9 rounds to 3, and Fury on points. What about you?
I see it being cagey at the start,
Mm-hmm.
and in similarity to the Ortiz fight, I see Fury starting to get his timing, maybe about the third round, fourth round, and Wilder becoming sort of more of a target as time goes on. I think his flaws and vulnerabilities will be exposed.
Right.
But with that said, it'll be interesting to see if Wilder then, a sense of urgency kicks in and Wilder tries to try and press him. But I think his lateral movement will offset
That's
Wilder's aggressiveness, if any. If Wilder tries to increase that aggressiveness, I think Tyson's lateral movement will just be too much.
Mm.
And it will just, I can see a points win, possibly. I think I'll go with a points win for Tyson Fury, but it's all dependent upon Tyson being sharp.
Yeah.
If he's not sharp, it could turn it differently.
I think it'd be wise for anyone who's going to bet on Fury. It might be wise to just wait for the first round. Just see, okay, is he moving? Because we need to see a lot better movement than the last 2 fights. If he's looking really, really good with that footwork, that'll be the key. I think that's what he needs. We know he's got the still got the hand speed, the ring IQ, all that.
I think if you're going to see a knockout, James, you'll see a knockout. If you're going to see a knockout at Tyson, you'll see it late on.
Yeah.
As opposed to early, because early Tyson's got good reflexes.
True.
And early on, when he's fresh, it'll be harder for Wilder, I reckon, to tag him.
Mm.
Maybe as the fight goes on, as Wilder warms to the occasion, there might be a chance of that. But I just see that Tyson's lateral movement and the jab, if Tyson throws the jab with authority, this is the thing as well, like Tyson needs to establish authority from the get-go.
Yeah, and get respect.
He needs to get his respect. And Wilder, if you look at the Washington fight, Wilder didn't like that jab in his face at all.
No, he didn't.
He was
No.
up.
No.
So there's that for me. If Tyson gets into his rhythm in about the third or the fourth round, I'm going to go with a points decision, but only if he's sharp and back to his best, and only if he tightens up. And he tightens up those sort of weaknesses that he has, where when he's jabbing, his right hand crosses over to his left because that exposes him, or he keeps his hands far too low. Because Wilder's the sort of guy, if you present, this is the difference between Wilder and Klitschko. Klitschko is reticent to take risks. He'll take a risk if it's 60-40 or 70-30 in his favour. But Deontay Wilder will take a risk if it's 20-80 in his favour.
There is a yeah, you're right, but there is a bit of a. I can think of a bit of a counter to that. I could be wrong, but the other thing is with the lateral movement, Klitschko, you could see this in the AJ fight. He's quite light on his feet for a big man, pretty good footwork, and I think he can get into those positions to throw. Whereas Wilder's a guy who he does plant his feet in a really wide, planting his feet in a wide fashion. And that's where Fury can be waiting till he plants and then he moves, you see. So I'm not totally convinced yet Wilder will have any more success than Klitschko, even though I accept there were fights where even Emmanuel Stewart was yelling at Klitschko saying you got to be more aggressive here. Even in fights he was winning, he was upset that Klitschko was too scared to really dominate. Before he had a guy hurt, he didn't really want to impose himself too much. So I see arguments both ways, and I'm not totally sure. But it's just that thing of how he... See, here's an example. If we go back through history, I can see even 5'10" Mike Tyson with his very fast footwork keeping up with these dancing type of fighters like Ali or Fury and getting in on the inside. But and I know it's obscure to compare someone that short or Marciano to these guys, but remember in their eras, they were sometimes fighting guys only a few inches taller. And I also think Wilder, he's 6'7", but he actually doesn't stand, he slouches a bit, and I don't think he makes use of when he jabs, for example, he doesn't really extend and get the maximum benefit of his reach. So I actually think, even though this is only 2 inches in height and only a few inches in reach, I think it'll look more like he's fighting a guy about Klitschko's size. I think it's bigger than and we'll know, once we see them in the ring, it's really hard to picture. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think these might be, at least in a world title fight, these are the 2 tallest guys ever. What do you...
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go back in time, though, and look at fights where there has been big men. Jess Willard against Jack Dempsey.
Yeah.
Willard was 6'5". I think Dempsey's, 6'1"?
6'1", yeah.
And you can also, talking to Joe Lewis fought the Amblin Alp, Morcan.
Yeah.
Who, truth be told, was just a
circus event.
Circus.
Yeah.
Literally, they got that guy from circus
oh, really?
shows.
I didn't know that, but I thought he looked like a circus show.
He was a circus strongman. The mob used him. Joe Lewis actually fought him 11 months after he turned professional. Joe Lewis turned professional in 1934. 11 months later, he was actually fighting him. And Carnera was a world champion, but it was mostly set-ups. If the fight wasn't fixed, they usually get beat. But he was a tall guy as well.
Yeah.
Tyson fought a couple of tall guys too on his way up. It's just like, if you can neutralise these physical attributes if your speed and timing and accuracy is on point.
Definitely. That's
people
what I
always
was saying.
That's
what I was saying about someone like Mike Tyson. You could bring him back now, and I can see him troubling all these big men because, yeah, he plants his feet to throw, but he's got the ability to be so elusive that he'll be right there and he could catch someone like Ali in my prediction. But if it's going to be that sort of fight where Tyson Fury now is really making use of his attributes, then I just question whether he will be able to pick when Wilder's going to throw and then move, you see? And whether, because am I right in saying Wilder's never fought anyone with lateral movement, has he? With good lateral movement?
Not Tyson Fury's caliber, I don't think. Most of the guys he's fought are pretty much, they're kind of similar to the guys that Tyson Fury's fought in ways.
Right.
So that's another factor that makes it intriguing, that Tyson just pips him on experience because of the Klitschko fight. But if you look at if you compare the records, there's not that much between them vis-a-vis, like Wilder vis-a-vis Fury's record.
Yeah, I would just say that, don't forget Fury at even 20 years old, he was kind of in 50-50 fights where he was fighting for the British Championship and that. I think he had a tougher journey to the top. He was in some wars, and I think that was and it's been quite a long journey, whereas Wilder is kind of, he turned pro late. Sure, he won a bronze in the Olympics, which speaks to some pedigree that we must be missing something there. But other than that, then again, what's his name? Who's the other big, tall British guy who keeps getting knocked out? What's his name? David Price. No, David Price won a bronze medal too. So Maybe that doesn't mean
Murray,
as much. Yeah,
twice a goal.
no. Wilder won a bronze as well, but Wilder really hasn't had the same sort of journey. And he did. Fury did win against a Pete Chisora. That was quite a few of these fights he was expected to lose, although were 50-50 quite early on, because he wasn't really rated by anyone until about the time of the Klitschko fight. In terms of I know he was rated by the governing bodies, but no one really took him seriously going into that fight. But you're right, in terms of really out of these two guys, there's just one major level fight, which is against Klitschko, isn't it? And that's...
Well, no disrespect to Chisora. Chisora is at world level, but he's not. He's on the periphery, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's another factor here, is that Tyson jumped straight from Chisora to Klitschko, which tells you as well that he's an occasion fighter.
Definitely.
He rises to the occasion. So maybe the timing's right with Wilder. Maybe we've sort of, we're saying Pianata and Safaris, they're not good warm-up matches for the calibre of Wilder.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't matter.
I mean, the odds here are pretty, for anyone listening who's going to have a bet, the odds for a Fury win are pretty favourable. And for a Fury, I mean, I even thought about having a flutter for a Fury knockout. You wouldn't put much on at all, but they're not, it's something like, yeah, like if you bet on a knockout at any time of the fight for Fury, well, a late knockout, and don't forget, a knockout can come in terms of a cut, a stoppage. It doesn't have to be Wilder's sparked out cold,
Well, the thing is, going back to what we've said, and I've sort of reiterated it a few times, here's the negatives of Wilder. He carries his hands low. Here's the negatives, a Wilder that would allow for Tyson to get a knockout. He carries his hands low. He telegraphs what he's doing. There's repetition in his work. He has poor balance in that stance. He's susceptible to rights, as I said, over his left.
Yeah.
If Tyson could somehow move to his right and find that right straight, he moves back in a straight line. He puts his hands out in front of him, or he'll actually drop his hands when he moves back. He makes mistakes like that. He pot shots. There's no real. He doesn't go through the gears.
No.
The way he should. The variety is limited.
Yeah.
But I'm saying all these negatives where Tyson could capitalise and get a knockout because of that, because of these negatives. But the positives is enough to neutralise all of that. His positives is
one punch, and that's it. Yeah.
And he's willing to wait until the 12th round. You could find a Meldrick Taylor Chavez episode here. With that famous Meldrick Taylor Chavez fight where Taylor was ahead in points, and Chavez managed to find the winning punch with 13 seconds to go on the clock.
Right.
That's the kind of scenario you could find here. Tyson could be boxing the head off him for 11 rounds.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. He's got that neutralising punch. If he finds it, Tyson could go down. And we've seen, look at the Cunningham fight. Cunningham found that right hand. But that, to be fair to Tyson, because Tyson went to war with Cunningham.
Or he was turning it into a wrestling match almost. It was crazy. I don't think he'll be I think
Tyson knew that he was that small that he could maybe have a go with him. But he found out that it doesn't matter how small they are. People, at that level anyway, at that weight, they can still crack. But what you can sort of derive from that fight is that Cunningham found the overhand right.
Yeah.
And that's the punch Wilder's going to be looking for.
I mean, this sounds like a harsh analogy for Wilder, but I'm just thinking when Lennox Lewis beat David Tua, and at the time I think Tua was undefeated or maybe one loss, and they were saying he could be the next Tyson, and he's won by many regards. I mean, he's got a hell of a chin, but he was one of the hardest punches ever, but very limited, extremely limited. And I remember Lennox, when he won that fight, when he was interviewed at the end, he said, "You need more than one punch to beat me." And Lennox Lewis was a real ring technician like Fury.
Probably the last great.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And therefore, is it going to be a scenario where, see, that's where I think AJ is a much greater threat to Fury because of the variety. You don't know where it's, the uppercuts, the hook, the jab, and this is where is as great as let's say Wilder, and I'm not convinced yet. I need to see him knock out some great fighters before we call it. But let's say let's exaggerate and say he's got twice the power of Foreman. The point is it's still going to be the case where if you tell someone as crafty as Fury, whatever their powerful punches, whether it's a hook, uppercut, or straight right, if you tell them you've only got to really avoid one punch, is that just too? Is Wilder just too limited to? Even if he had one more punch, like let's say his hook was a dynamite hook, like a Frazier hook or something, if you threw that into the mix, then I could see a real danger for Fury. But I just think he's just got to look out for one punch and last 12 rounds. Is it that hard for him?
I think you could reduce it to that. I don't think his left hook tickles. I also don't think his jab, when he throws it with authority, tickles, because he alternates it. Now and again he'll pop with the jab, and then at times he'll snap it out.
Okay.
But these are just, those two punches that I speak about seem to augment the right hand. Everything's geared to that right hand. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Tyson's susceptible, as I said, because when he jabs, as I noticed, he holds his right hand across his chest.
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves his right side vulnerable to a left hook. And I think when Wilder throws that hook, he's not throwing it to knock you out with it. He's throwing it so that he can set up the right. He's wanting to sort of momentarily put you off balance or to knock you sideways so that he can get the right off. That's what I think anyway. I could be wrong.
I mean, if there's a wild card here, and I mean, we haven't seen enough of Wilder in close fights to really judge it. If his left is better than we think, then that presents a whole new fight. And if this fight, he knows that he can't just, steamroll in and then land that right. If he's got a bit more setup than we realize and a bit more power in the left hook and the left jab, and he can throw those more regularly, then I think Fury's really in a hell of a fight here. But if it looks like so far, all I see with those, I don't really rate the hook much, and the jab he often doesn't use it even. And when he does, it's just sort of.
I think, mate, sorry to interrupt, but I think he pot shots too much. He doesn't set up combinations, any meaningful combinations, as I said.
No.
He's pot shotting. And Tyson, I think, will catch on to that. He'll see what he's trying to do. I think with Wilder's previous opponents, a lot of them capitulated to the sort of the threat of the right hand mentally. They capitulated to that constantly. I think it was draining that they were constantly trying to avoid that right hand, and Wilder plays it.
Yeah.
Another thing as well, these two smack talk in the ring and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think Tyson's I hope he's seasoned enough not to get dragged into that. When he starts, I think we've seen it with Cunningham where he started to open up a bit.
Yeah.
I would, I think Tyson should keep it pro and not get embroiled in that. I've noticed Wilder likes to, as I said, he likes to draw leads so he can then capitalise on or get off on.
Actually, that's a fair point. Like against Klitschko, it suited Fury to get involved in all that. And he was talking to Klitschko a lot. But I think in this fight, it's a different sort of fight, and he's better just to, you know, remain focused on using his lateral movement, you know.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Stick with the jab, lateral movement, and if there's any openings, you know, there will be, as I said, because of the flaws that Wilder presents, and Fury has the speed, and hopefully, if he's got the timing and the sharpness, he can capitalise on that.
Yeah.
He'll win. He'll win in points and maybe a late stoppage. But I think it all depends on how sharp he is in comparison to Wilder, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of bottom line for me. I don't know if I'm being naive, but that's just the way I see the fight going. So I'm going to go with Tyson, as I said before, mate, points.
On points,
win.
yeah. No, we pretty much see it the same, and